go effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me huge pleasure to welcome you all tonight to this, our fourth lecture in the series, Here I Stand, I Can Do No Other. This series has got off to a wonderful start, and it's wonderful to have so many of you back with us, and really a great pleasure tonight to welcome poet, speaker, inspirer of many, Lemn Sissay. Today our chair of this conversation is going to be Father Brandon Fletcher James, very well known at St Martin in the Fields because he trained with us here. He's a wonderful person and he's going to chair. Before he comes in to chair, can I just tell you there will be a chance for a Q&A later on. And if you are watching online, and we welcome all those who are joining us for the live stream, if you want to ask questions, then the email you must write your questions to is jolly, Jolley, .gosnold, Gosnold, @smitf.org. And that email address will be on your screen, so you can see that and send any online questions, and we will ask some of the questions from our online audience. Now it gives me very great pleasure to welcome Brandon Fletcher James and Lemn Sissay. Thank you very much.
A very warm welcome to those watching online and those of us in person for our fourth segment in our autumn lecture series at St Martin in the Fields. This year's talks are inspired by the celebrated words of Martin Luther, a reformer during the year 1521. After being excommunicated from the church, he was put in front of a panel of imperial assembly in the German city of Worms. When given the option to recant of his heretical teachings or face the severe prospect of punishment and torture, he responded with these words: "Here I stand, I can do no other." Luther remained immovable in his beliefs against fierce hostility. This same spirit of defiant determination in the face of life's many struggles, I think, couldn't figure more perfectly than in the life and work of our speaker tonight. Lemn Sissay is a broadcaster, writer, playwright, spoken word artist, and first and foremost, a poet. Born in 1967 in Wigan to his 21-year-old Ethiopian mother, he was forcibly placed into foster care until the age of 12, and then in various care homes till his late teens. At 17 and a half years of age, he began the arduous process of piecing together the puzzle of his life, of rediscovering himself, his roots, and his story. At 18, Lemn moved to Manchester to search out his literary career. He released his first book of poetry in 1988, and at the age of 21, and since the age of 24, has been a full-time writer to worldwide acclaim. Lemm's experiences as a child in foster care propelled him into a lifelong journey to discover his authentic self. There is something that he's covered extensively in documentaries, plays, and poetry. He has also in his time been former Chancellor to Manchester University, a recipient of an MBE in 2010 and of an OBE in 2021 by the late Queen in his services to literature and charity, and remains a pivotal voice in the subject of children in care. Tonight he will be speaking on the subject of his memoir, My Name Is Why, a tale of the loss and recovery of self as a foster child and his later experience in the care system during the 1980s in the north of England. In it, he pieces together the fragments of his fraught and difficult childhood to deliver a testimony of hope and enduring resilience. The narrative is interspersed with his actual files, social workers' reports, and letters that give the institutional version of events, replete with misinformation and misdirection, which Sissay probes, rebuts, and corrects. The book, while focused on the care system, speaks profoundly of the human spirit, of that vestigial longing in each of us to know and affirm our sense of self, our belonging, but particularly for those whose own narrative and agency has been forcibly taken away from them. He will also discuss and read his most recent publication, Let the Light Pour In, a series of what he dubs John Quatrains, 4-line poems written over the course of 3 years as part of his daily morning ritual. These are small vignettes of Lem's everyday waking to the world around him, to commit to start one's day with an act of defiant hope amidst the darkness within and all around us. Lem is a phenomenal speaker, and I think no biography can fully encapsulate the life of an individual. So without further ado, can we please show our love and appreciation for a poet and luminary, Lemn Sissay.
I wrote that introduction. It's not bad, is it? It's difficult to speak about yourself in third person as if you didn't write it. I didn't write it. I didn't. I'm joking. But it came from a biog, which I probably did partially write to a degree. But thank you very much for that introduction. I'm going to read from My Name Is Why, which is my witness statement, really, of what happened to me. And this series is called Here I Stand. And every verse in this book starts with a 4-line poem, a quatrain. The same 4-line poems which I write every single day and which are collected in the book that came out this week, which is called Let the Light Pour In, and it's number 6 in the Sunday Times bestseller this week. Don't clap, don't clap, don't clap, don't clap, don't clap. I know there's one of you thinking, oh really? You come here to tell us that? So, but it's rare that poetry gets on the bestseller list of hardback fiction, and I know that because I've been a poet all my life, and I know that because I know how small the sales are, and I know that because if you're in poetry, you're not there to become famous. You don't become a poet. You don't think I want to be famous. Poetry. You don't. You do it for reasons which are bigger than any projection to an audience. Something that is deep inside the self. Something that is saying in every single line, here I stand. What I see here is happening to me now. And there are people out there who will tell me that I am crazy. That the thoughts that I was seeing something that shouldn't be happening were wrong, that it must be me. So in poetry, I found a place that could translate how I felt, how I thought, where I was, and it was an acknowledgement, poetry, and the writing of poetry, that there is something out there that is bigger than me, that is bigger than anything that I could go through. So in the act of writing as a witness, I was using a form that was bigger than what I was witnessing. So I knew 2 things. I knew that I saw what I saw and it happened, and I knew that what I saw and the fact it happened was something to me at that time, but actually it was nothing, because there is something bigger than me and everything that happened to me. And that's the power of art, and that is why people use art to sell any big idea, any great faith, literature, song, poetry, because the message is as strong as the the actual message is as strong as the carrier of the message. In other words, I really do believe that there is something incredibly powerful in art as a human expression that is actually bigger than all of us, which is why there are national anthems. It is why we learn from our faiths through the books we read, through the songs we sing. We feel the Spirit. Yes, we do feel the Spirit. It's what we go to gigs for, Jay Mitra. It's what we go to church for. We feel the Spirit. And we use art to transport it. Therefore, art is close to whatever spirit, whatever religion, whatever faith, whatever political movement you're in. It is the poetry of Northern Ireland, which helps so many people. Anyway, I didn't know I was going to say all of that. I've banged on. It stayed by me, and here I stand. And I was saying to you that each verse in this book, each chapter begins with a verse. And this talk is called Here I Stand. And the first verse is this: I am a bull in the china shop. I am the bull in a china shop, and with all my strength and will, as a storm smashed the teacups, I stood still. I am the bull in the china shop, and with all my strength and will, as a storm smashed the teacups, I stood still. And what I was saying in those 4 lines is, I am a witness to the fact that I didn't do this, and I'm the only witness, and I know I'm going to be blamed as the bull in the china shop. So that's the book that has become whatever it's become today, and it will be still in the top 10 list on National Poetry Day on October the 5th. I'm going to read my book now, and I'm not going to talk. I didn't know I was going to say what I said. I said it. It wasn't scripted. Although I'm going to get a recording of this and repeat it for the next 10 gigs. Because who wants to think on the spot? Let's be honest. I would rather curate my authenticity than actually be authentic. You know what I mean? That was a joke, just for anybody who's just... There will be somebody listening to this, Hanisha. There will be somebody listening to this, and they will be thinking, he's a little bit arrogant. But being an arrogant poet is just a lost leader. It's not gonna go anywhere. There are people who come into poetry. I've been a poet all my adult life, and they come into poetry and they tell us that there's a poetry police who've got big ivory towers. And they're like, there's just these big ivory towers in poetry. Big ivory towers. And they keep me out by using words I don't understand, by making me feel small. And I hate them. And I'm going to smash down the walls of their ivory towers. And if they exclude me, I'm going to build something myself. And they build what effectively is an ivory tower, and then they just shake their fists from that ivory tower to the other ivory towers until all you've got is a forest of ivory towers, of people who have all decided they've been excluded from the other people. Let me just tell you this. Poetry is the lowest seller on the market. The only insecurity you really feel as you're trying to get into the poetry world, it's not, it's a field, it's not, it's a park. As you're trying to get, the only fear you've got is your own fear of getting in there. That's what's happening. Nobody's actually excluding you. How can you be excluded from your own imagination? How can you find reasons to feel like you're not being let into something that you have no idea about? But I tell you what, it's good fuel, and somebody will fund it because it's believable. Sorry, I wanted to close on that point with something which is that the forest of ivory towers, it's that anger is an expression in search of love. It's a 4-line thing and I can't remember it. I've just gone down a rabbit hole, folks. You came with me and I really appreciate that, okay? I'm now not going to talk at all. I'm going to read the text, which is what I'm meant to do. But there's something about that last statement that I need to get right. The poetry world is a small world. That's it. It is a small world of poetry groups and readers, and it's quite brilliant and beautiful. But it's not, is it? The poetry world is not a small world. It's massive. It's in adverts, poetry. It's in song. Adele wrote poetry and used to do poetry gigs. Amy Winehouse wrote poetry and used to do poetry gigs. It's in national anthems. Lots of national anthems around the world. It's in theatre, it's in plays, it's in opera, it's in song, it's in popular music. It's in Ireland, it's Celtic, it's English, it's everywhere. It's inclusive, not exclusive. It's in all cultures. The idea that poetry is a small world will make you think it's full of ivory towers, little ones with little spiral staircases. It's not, it's everywhere. Think of art as everywhere, because it is. And the trick that many people get you to is to convince you that it isn't, that it's something that you don't have permission to enjoy or get involved in. Imagine how you might think if you read those Emily Dickinson poems or that Sylvia Plath book imagine how you might feel if it wasn't a stage that you were going through in your younger years, that if you carried it with you. This is why poetry is used in religions. It moves people to action. And that's why people are frightened of people grasping the fact that they are fully creative human beings who can engage with the world on a level which knows that the highest power is much more than what they're told it is. Shall I start reading? Okay. I can get things wrong as well. I'm okay with that. I'm not asking you to believe me. This is who I am. That's what I'm about. That's important to say. Okay, so you haven't heard anything that I've just said, and I've just come in and I'm going to read my book. Preface. At 14, I tattooed the initials of what I thought was my name into my hand. The tattoo is still there, but it wasn't my name. It's a reminder that I've been somewhere I should never have been. The authority, I was not who I thought I was. The authority knew it, but I didn't. The authority had been writing reports about me from the day I was born. My first footsteps were followed by the click, clack, clack of a typewriter. The boy is walking. My first words were recorded, click, clack, clack. The boy has learned to talk. Fingers were poised above a typewriter, waiting for whatever happened next. The boy is adapting. Paper zipped from typewriters and into files, and the files slipped into folders under the S section of a tall metal filing cabinet. For 18 years, this process repeated over and over again. Click, clack, clack. Secret meetings were held. The folders were taken out and placed on tables, surrounded by men and women from the authority. Decisions were made. Put him here. Put him there. Shall we try drugs? Try this. Try that. After 18 years of experimentation, the authority threw me out. It locked the doors securely behind me and hid the files in a data company called the Iron Mountain. So I wrote to the authority, and I hand-delivered the letter. The reply informed me that I had to write to customer services. I wrote to customer services. I was a customer now. And customer services replied to say they were not permitted to release the files. The authority placed me with incapable foster parents. It imprisoned me. It moved me from institution to institution. And yet now, at 18 years old, I had no history, no witnesses, no family. In 2015, following a 30-year campaign to get my records, the chief executive of Wigan Council, Donna Hall, wrote me a letter. She had them. Within a few months, I received 4 thick folders of documents marked A, B, C, and D. Click, clack, clack. On reading them, I knew. I took the authority to court. How does a government steal a child and then imprison him? How does it keep it a secret? This story is how. And so the book has the files in it. And I did get them in 2015. I took the government to court. It took me 3 years for them to settle outside of court, 2018. And then I used the files in 2019 to have some relativity with my story. The thing is this. Family is a set of disputed memories between one group of people over a lifetime. And I only know that's what it is at base, because I did not have it. You see, we are all breathing right now. What you're seeing in seeing me is happening through your breath. It is keeping your body alive. It is sending oxygen through your veins. It is the fact that you can see me now and the ones you love. But you don't go around every day saying, I am breathing. I am breathing. You don't stop people and say to them, I am breathing. You are breathing. But if I was to take your breath away from you, you would slowly realize that your fingers are tingling. You didn't know your fingers depended on breath, but they're tingling, and that you would start to feel your vision would start to get straight. And you would think, you wouldn't have thought your vision was about your breath, and your heart would start to panic a little bit more. You would start to get a real sense that you were drowning, and then your logical brain would go, and then you panic. You panic. And you realize, in fact, not even at that point do you realize that breath is what has been keeping you alive. Exactly the same with family. You should never know how important family is, because to know how important it is truly, you need to take all of it away, and not only it, the memory of it. And that's how I felt at 18 years of age. I had no family, nobody to confirm or deny or be angry with me for anything that I'd ever done from 18 years of age. I was persona non grata. I had no family. The foster parents left me at 12 years, and I was the only witness. Here I stand. I am a bull in the china shop, and with all my strength and will, as the storm smashed the teacups, I stood still. So getting my files, oh, by the way, people say to me all the time, they say, oh, well, Lem, family's not all that good. Family's a pain. Family was never meant to be good. That isn't what it was about. I truly feel that it is what the faiths are about holding the family in mind together around an idea which can make them all recognize there's something bigger. Anyway, so this is my files, and says for the first time I knew what my birth weight was. Birth weight was 6 pounds, 6 pounds and 0 ounces, and it says here in this letter, buttocks satisfactory. That's right. The nurse, the SRN, some of you all know the SRNs, buttocks satisfactory. For years, I had that down as a kind of racism, a kind of Sarah Bartman kind of vibe that they were going, oh, his buttocks are satisfactory. But it wasn't. I was told by an SRN, a nurse from the days, that actually that was something to do with rickets and something to do with the health, health of the child, unless she was just lying to me, which she wasn't. My mother came to England, found herself pregnant, as a lot of women did in the 1960s, hence us, as a lot of women did. But if they were without a partner, they were seen somehow as a threat to society. If you were pregnant and you didn't have a husband, it's just not to all people, but there was a lot. And my mum landed in this country. She could afford to fly here. She had no intention of staying here. She was part of the expansion of Ethiopia by the Emperor Haile Selassie. There's a whole generation going out, getting their education, coming back again, and supposed to be feeding through. I mean, one of them went out and came back as a revolutionary and overthrew the emperor, but that's a whole other story. It's really important to travel, learn, and bring back skills. And she was that generation. And she came to England in the 60s, found herself pregnant, had no intention of staying here and didn't, but she landed in the wrong country at the wrong time to be vulnerable and from another country. Ethiopia's never been colonized. The Italians came from a short period of time, but unlike England, which was colonized in 1066, Ethiopia's a proud country of faith, actually. Strong faith. And she came here to study, and she was placed in a mother and baby home in the north of England. And that's where she met Irish women. I know this because I've been a detective on my own story. I found proof, took the government to court, I've received the apology. The facts of what I'm sharing with you. So she was sent to, it says here in the letter, she was sent to a home which was run by the Liverpool Board of Moral Welfare. Because those women who were pregnant, they were a threat to church and they were a threat to the state. They were like estrogen terrorists, sort of walking down the main street. You know, they could explode at any minute and sort of infect men with their estrogen stuff. And so she found herself in a mother and baby home run by nuns who made her feel guilt, or who were supposed to make her feel guilt, and all of the other women. Meanwhile, the social worker, remember, these women were at their most vulnerable. And we'll come to who should take the blame for this in a second. And the idea was that at her most vulnerable, she signed the adoption papers. So all these women who were on the bridge of childhood and adulthood, inside the trauma of being cut off from their own families and told to deal with this problem. So the social worker comes in and plays a kind of paternal role and gets them to sign the adoption papers. That's the key thing to do, because then you've got the official tick that's in paper. And I need to say one more thing. Those women, if you think about it, giving a child away so that it has a better life is, if you want to know about prejudice, is the most heroic thing that a human being could do. Because any of you mothers know, most of you should know, will know, that the love you feel for your child when you have them is actually incredible. It's a brand new thing to many women and many men as well. You have your child and you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I had so much love. I cry when I'm watching Teletubbies. Why? But what you've done is you've ring-fenced your experience of love as only possible if you physically have the child, and that is not true. You don't have to have a child to feel that much love. The adopted parent has the same beautiful relationship with their child. And then I get people coming to me after I say this, and they say, Lem, I hate my adopted mum, and I hate my adopted dad. I don't know how you can say that. And I say to them, welcome to family. Family is the privilege of not having to fix things. It's the privilege of being able to keep a gripe for the rest of your life. You can build a blooming house on that. You can get married on that gripe with your dad or with your mum or with your sister or with your brother who you're not talking to forever. And if you think that they're going to get to the grave and they're going to be lied just before they die and go, I'm sorry, it's not true. You're clinging on, sorry, not you, but me. I realized that it was very easy to cling on to a gripe, and that's the privilege of family. You never have to forgive. The privilege of family. I have people who come up to me after saying this and they say, Lem, I will never forgive. And that's fine. I'm not saying you should. I get it. I'm just saying that the privilege of family is that you don't have to forgive. And it's one of the saddest things about family as well. But that's life. But what I was saying is that my mother was in this mother and baby home, and she would not sign the adoption papers to the social worker. So he gave me to foster parents who wanted to adopt me because they wanted to save a baby from Africa. There was a narrative around that which was going around. And did you know children's homes weren't an African invention? This society took children's homes to Africa as a way of taking children and then sold the idea back to people here to give money to that, and it becomes a cash cow. This is proven. So the nuns were looking after my mother, and the social worker were getting people to sign the adoption papers, and she wouldn't. By the way, this isn't the cleric's fault or the nuns, and it's not the social worker's fault. This is our responsibility. It was on our watch. We were the ones who turned the other way. They were doing the work. We weren't doing the work. We were looking the other way. We were talking about those women as if they were, I don't know what, from animals, undeserving. We're the guilty ones, not the people who... We can't patronize the past by pretending it wasn't our twitching curtains and the way we spoke about those women that has led to this. The nuns were giving service as best as they could, and it was the worst service in that case. But it was as best as they could. I am the bull in the china shop. With all my strength and will, as a storm smashed the teacups, I stood still. So I'm going to go straight to the next chapter. I don't know if I've left any holes, you can ask me questions later. That's a picture of me that was in my files. Can you see that? That's the picture of me. To be honest, when you see this picture, you think, I would steal that child, to be honest. I was a very cute baby. Everybody's with me in my story, until they see that and they go, oh, well, we'd steal you as well, But that's just it. I was a little chubby, gorgeous baby. And I was growing into what, though? chapter 3. Chapter 4. Raise me with sunrise, bathe me in light, wash all the shadows that fell from the night. I developed a sense that there was something wrong with me around the time that I began attending junior school. RLU's Infants was my first school. It was straight up at the top of Osborne Road. We'd normally walk with Mum when she could take us, but later I reached the age when I could walk on my own with my brother. I liked the exact curvature of the earth. I need to tell you this before I carry on, because I've done too much talking in between the texts, and I apologize. At 12 years of age, the foster parent puts me into children's homes. They said that they were my mum and dad. The social worker names me Norman when I was a baby. And then the social worker names me Norman. The foster parents take me, tell me they're my mum and dad forever. My birth mum won't sign the adoption papers. So the narrative that I'm told is my birth mother didn't want me, and out of spite, she wouldn't sign the adoption papers. Out of spite. But they're my mum and dad forever. So they teach me to say words like mum and dad. They teach me to speak, because I'm just a baby. They teach me that they are my everything, and they are my everything. And I love them to bits forever, because they're my mum and dad, and my own mother rejected me anyway. So that's what had happened. And then at 12 years of age, they put me into children's homes, said they'd never write to me again, never visit me. They never wrote to me, but never visit me. They said it was my fault, and left me, and I lost everybody. Brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, granddads, grandma, town, village, the absolute, it was an emotional Hiroshima. I was the bull in the china shop, and with all my strength and will, as a storm smashed the teacups, I stood still, and I knew that something was not right, and that I had no witnesses. And then I was brought up in a children's home in the care system, where everybody viewed us as if we were a problem waiting to happen. If you're naughty, I'll put you in a children's home, was the way the saying goes. But we weren't naughty kids, we were traumatized kids. But not only did everybody in the town believe that, the staff in the children's homes believed it. By the way, I am so well. I am so healthy. And I am okay. This isn't my way of washing my dirty linen. This isn't a way of me working through my stuff. That is a bad thing to do. I am sharing a story that needed witnesses. It needed allies. And I looked out of the children's home at the people around, and they weren't. Not only were they not allies, but we were all the naughty kids. Everybody believed it. The social workers believed it. The nurses believed it. The school teachers believed it. And we were the most traumatized children in that society. We were going through the worst that you would give your own children. That is, that they would be cut off from relativity. They would be without a hug. I realized in my adult life that I had not been hugged from the moment I went into the children's home to the moment I left at 18 years of age. From 12 to 18 years of age, all the adults said they cared for us. None of them touched us. And isn't it? It's all going through your mind now. Well, health and, Lemn, the insurance companies, and, can't touch, and blah, blah. Yes, you're right. You're protected from your instincts working in the care system. Violently. Nobody talks about the insurance companies in the care system and how they stop social workers from actually acting on some form of instinct. Not every child wants to be hugged, but it should be acknowledged that not hugging a child will have a detrimental effect on its growth. I'll tell you what was dysfunctional. The institution that called itself care and couldn't hug a child. That's violence. That's emotional violence. I am the bull in the china shop. And with all my strength and will, as a storm smashed the teacups, I stood still. The next verse, chapter 4, raise me with sunlight, bathe me in light, sunrise, bathe me in light, wash all the shadows that fell from the night. I developed a sense that there was something wrong with me around the time that I began attending junior school at R.L. Hughes. It was straight up at the top of Osborne Road. We'd normally walk with Mum, and she could take us, but later I reached the age when I could walk on my own with my brother. I liked the exact curvature of the earth, of the school grounds. The green grass went on forever, and the football field and the running track and the neat 1960s buildings. I preferred it to home. There was less static in the air. Mr. Graves was the head teacher. Headmaster. He entered the hall each morning and stood near the monkey bars with his arms behind his back. They said he was an officer in the army. The music teacher sat in front of the piano. Mr. Graves gave a solemn nod, and the pianist would begin with the prelude while peering over her glasses, and then we would sing the song that we also sang in church. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. I looked at my head teacher in awe. The files are written in this, okay? Printed exactly as they are when I saw them from the social worker. After the school holidays, Christopher will be starting at the same school, and it will be interesting to see what happens because Norman does not like Christopher to be better at him at anything. So this could possibly spurt Norman onto effort, or on the other hand, he may give up if he feels that Christopher is beating him. I hadn't realized at any point that none of what I've told you so far is true. None of it. I wasn't a happy child. I was a deceitful one. I was causing problems for everyone. It must be true. These are the words of Mr. Graves from the social worker's report of 1976. Spoke to Mr. Graves several times on the phone and eventually visited the school. He felt that Norman's successes were too many for Chris to cope with. Went on to talk about another placement for Norman without any consideration of how the boy might feel. I put it to him that it was the only home the boy had known. I told him that another placement was out of the question and went on to inform him of what I had discussed with the foster parents themselves. We talked about specific incidents in the school when Norman's behavior had been inappropriately rewarded. He is never going to learn to cope with disapproval if approval is all he is being exposed to. The boy is going to meet with negative attitudes being unreasonably displayed to him at some time or other, and one wonders how he will cope with this when he is entirely unused to it. Spoke to Norman's class teacher. It was obvious that the boy has a very special place in this school. Staff, teaching staff, domestic staff, give him preferential treatment. Norman has to experience more realistic handling, and attitudes towards him have to undergo a change but not reject him. Headmaster will keep in touch about both children visit to foster home Norman's seen. I loved life. My brother Christopher was 8. I loved school. I loved him. I showed him my love by punching him. We had the same rivalry most brothers have. We fought with unbridled determination the way brothers do. We wrestled, we sweated until one of us, invariably Christopher, would burst into tears. Catherine and David had no children when they took me. Christopher was their firstborn, but I was their first. I was the eldest. I love my town. I love my family. I love the sibling rivalry. I love the market, the flower park, the big park, the books, the church, my friends. The head teacher suggesting to the social worker that I be moved for the sake of Christopher couldn't have happened in isolation. Norman's successes were too many. How could a child's successes be too many? The social worker said, Norman doesn't like Christopher beating him. Of course he doesn't. He's my brother. Something was at play, something I didn't understand. Norman's behavior had been inappropriately rewarded. He's never going to learn to cope with disapproval if approval is all he is being exposed to. This inclines me to think that my foster parents must have spoken to the head teacher prior to his speaking with the social worker, as there's no counter-narrative in the files. All I can tell you is what my parents told me. My mum was a nurse, and my dad was my dad, and he was a teacher, and my brother and sister were my brothers and sisters, and this was our town. But I couldn't help giving my brother a Chinese burn. Chapter 5, smouldering embers in the sky above, anger is an expression in search of love. From the files, 28th of the 7th, 75. I called to see Norman today, the family just having returned from their holiday in Scotland. Mrs. Greenwood was upset. It seems that just this morning, Norman repeated what he had been doing most mornings while on holiday. He is getting up in the early hours and eating sweet foods, particularly biscuits. He has eaten as many as 2 packets. Norman says he's sorry for his behavior, but cannot promise not to do it again in future. 8 years old I was, for the record. 8 years old, and I did steal biscuits, but not 2 whole packs. This exaggeration would come back to haunt me. What I did was this. I stole biscuits from the biscuit tin, and then I arranged them in the tin in a stacked roof column system to hide the fact I'd stolen them. Genius. One holiday in Scotland, at my granddad's home, the family left me in the cottage as punishment for lying about stealing some cake. Sarah, sister, Christopher, brother, David and Catherine walked down the hill in Lochinver. I thought I'd been locked in my room, but the door was open, so I sobbed my way dramatically downstairs. The rich smell of silver birchwood from the embers of the fire filled the front room. Wiping tears from my face, I saw on the table a half-cut ginger cake. The tears evaporated, replaced by butterflies in my stomach. Maybe I can have a piece, I thought. If I cut it at exactly the same way as it was already cut at the end, then no one will notice that I've taken a slice. Genius. And so I did. McCavity was much cleverer than that. The cake tasted so good that I figured one more slice wouldn't do any harm. There were no witnesses, but then there was only one suspect. It tasted so good, so I did it again. To this day, I don't know why I got into habits of stealing biscuits and bits of cake, but I did. They told me I was devious. The problem was my first instinct was to say I didn't take the cake. I hadn't noticed that the reason that they'd left me in the cottage in the first place as punishment for stealing cake, with cake on the table downstairs, was a trap. Still, I denied I hadn't stolen the cake. McCavity would have more guile and more style than that. Soon enough, after another hour in the bedroom, I realized that I had to admit to taking the cake. The lies worried them more than the theft. This habit of stealing cake was the crack in the dam. There was something bad in me, something I didn't understand. "Don't you look at me with those big brown eyes," was the strange refrain my mum would shout at me. I didn't understand what she saw. If I argued that I didn't know what she saw, then would I be lying? How could I see what she and my foster father saw? Back at home, in the front room, is where I was punished. Same place we entertained visitors, same place the books were, same place social worker would sit. The leather sofa was polished to perfection and smelled of pledge. Stealing cake and lying about it was an indication that the devil was inside of me. The front room is where I was caned. I loved the normal stuff. The middle room, where we mostly lived and watched clangers and crackerjack on TV. The files tell a different story, through a story narrated by my foster parents, filtered by the social worker. Within 3 years, it will be reported that I threatened to kill the entire family, except for the baby. When we ask questions in a short while, you can ask me what that was about, because it's very biblical, that, isn't it? Me threatening at 11 years of age that I'm going to kill the entire family except for the baby. It's very, very Old Testament stuff, that is. But I must have done that because they said I did it. So maybe when we get to the Q&A, you could ask me what that was about. But from what I did believe when I went into care is it was my fault. And you might ask yourself, mightn't you? You might say to yourself, what did you do? You know, what was the nub of it, Len, when they put you into care? Because all of this story leads to that question. That's precisely the question that I asked myself when I went into care and I lost everybody. What did I do? And while in care, I remember them telling me how it was my fault, how I was using the children's homes against them because I knew that I could go. And I remember looking at them, not understanding what they were doing. And I've proved this, by the way, that is what they're doing because the facts don't ring true. I've made documentaries where I've gone back to the schools and been told, no, you were a ray of sunshine. There's nobody out there telling me that I was killing babies or that I was the kind of child that would do that. Not even the freaking social worker. But he couldn't tell me that, could he? He had to do his job. His job was to carry me. He was fetching water, not knowing whether it was going to the well or from the well. He had to take me to the children's home. And every children's home I was in, they were like, what do we do with him? I was a problem waiting to be solved. Not because I did anything wrong, because they did not know what to do, because they did not know to care. They had that taken away from them. Let me just tell you this. The greatest thing that a human being can do for another is adopt. Because any parent knows that a child will find your weak spot and press that button. And you don't know what it is right now. Maybe it's money. You've got lots of money now, but maybe money is your weak spot because you didn't have it. Or maybe it's something to do with your mum that she passed on to you, but money's your issue. Your child is going to say to you, apropos nothing. I don't know what apropos means, but I think it should go there. But, without anything, give me money. I want money. You have money. I want money. There's no complication. Money, you have it, you give me. What's your weak spot? Because your child is going to find it. The thing you didn't think was visible to anybody, the little narrative you've had going on in your head all your life, your child's going to press that button. Is it about home? Is it about the fact that you fought to have your own home? Your child is the one who's going to say, I'm going to stay here till I'm 40. I don't really have to or want to or whatever. What is your weak spot? Because your child is going to press that button. And therefore, to adopt is the greatest thing that a human being can do for another human being, period, bar none. It is. People will talk about parenthood as being the greatest privilege. So I have a lot of adopting parents come to me and they say, no, Len, we get so much out of it. Of course you do, you're a parent, that's the deal. I still think it is the greatest thing that one human being can do for another. I'm going to read you one more chapter. I had to work out what had happened. And it took me years. And you're still working out your parents now. Whether they're here or whether they're gone. You're still working them out now. You're still having a conversation. And you've grown, as you've grown, you've been able to look at the memory of them and see who they are through that lens. And it's the gift that keeps on taking. Because you can't get past yourself through seeing them, to see them in their independence. And it's a beautiful thing as well, because you start to empathize with them if you're lucky. And befriend them if you're even more lucky. So I had to work out what it was, what happened to me. But I didn't have a relationship with them. So I had to go back to my memory of them and search until I found it. I've forgiven my foster parents fully, eye to eye. I met them. My uncle is a man called Greg Haslam. We're from Wigan. But Greg Haslam is a preacher in a church, was a preacher in a church that's just on Buckingham Palace Road. And I met my mum, my foster mum, and I walked from the South Bank. We went to, actually I met her in the South Bank and I forgave her, but then I met her again outside that church, across, there's a Pret somewhere near it, Buckingham Palace Road. And I forgave her fully. Eye to eye. I took it back the next day, but at the time, full apology. Chapter 7, one more chapter, and then that's it. And I tried to work out what it was, what was going on. Dawn is a wake for dusk. Can you? Dawn is a wake for dusk. Light will find what it must. What will be, and thus shadows speak for us. The journey to Winwick became an oft-repeated one throughout my childhood. Dad always stayed in the car. When we got there, he stayed with Sarah because Sarah was too young. Winwick was a sprawling red brick institution set in manicured greenery. It was the picture of order and quietude, covering up the secrets and lies. Mum, me, and Chris walked through the front door to an archway, and after Mum signed a register, we stepped into the wide tiled corridor of the asylum. It smelled of vomit, bleach, Savlon, and urine. Our footsteps were louder here and followed by a sharp echo. Haunting moans pealed into the air as we stepped onwards. A nurse appeared as if from nowhere and rushed past us. Chris, my brother, was chewing his lip and getting paler and paler. He developed this nervous habit of sucking his upper lip, leaving it dry and chapped. Our long journey in this other world led to a public room like a cove with lots of winged armchairs and with women in them. I scanned the room slowly and I noticed that none of the women were right. They were holding their heads all wrong. They were strange dribbling creatures. Then Mum spotted one of them and stepped quietly over to her. The woman had an overhang to her mouth, a wolf-like, dribbling, hair like a nest, and she was rocking backwards and forwards, a twisted arm held out like a snapped twig. There was a familiar shape to her eyes. "This is your auntie," said Mum. "Say hello to your auntie." I pulled myself together. "Hello, Auntie," I said. I liked her. She liked me. I could see a twinkle in her twisted, slow eye as her bent head rocked back and forward, and her twisted elbow pushed out a clawed hand towards me and brushed my cheek. She couldn't speak, but her grunts were enough for me to know. Chris twitched and managed to mumble. Mum took out a hanky and lovingly wiped drool from Auntie's mouth and chin. How long did we spend there, watching her rock back and forward? I knew instinctively not to ask questions as we headed off. Mum visited her twin regularly, sometimes alone, sometimes with us. My auntie had been like that from birth. And as children have a sense for these things, I realised that no one mentioned her. Not Grandma, her mum, or my mum, her sister. My grandmother, Phyllis Munro, never visited her daughter with Mum and us. I wonder, does Catherine, Mum, does Catherine believe that she took away what her sister needed? What a thought. People can be cruel to themselves. People can be cruel to each other. Was my mum born in shock that she had survived? Did she blame herself? Did her mother blame her? Was Catherine living with a constant sense that she was not good enough because she had taken the air from her sister? Well, she would do everything to prove otherwise. She would foster a coloured baby, and she would show her mother, who was a foster parent too, that she was good, in spite of what she'd done to her sister inside her mother's womb. I honestly believe that if my mum could have changed places with her sister in the asylum, she would have. Nature may be cruel, but at least it's honest. It's not the doings of the devil or of God. My auntie hadn't done anything wrong. Her sister hadn't done anything wrong. Her mother hadn't done anything wrong. She was not a curse for sins. If they could all let themselves see that this is the beauty of nature. My mother's twin sister was beautiful. She was as beautiful as any catwalk model, and her mind as relevant as Alice Walker's. It's not my aunt who has the problem. It's my grandmother who couldn't look at her and whose subsequent hatred for her other daughter, my mother, caused my mother's inescapable feeling that she didn't deserve to be alive. No Christmases and no birthdays would rid my mother of the feeling that her twin sister had a birthday and a Christmas too. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small. There were two other sisters, Ruth and Sue, and a brother called Uncle Alec, my uncles and aunts. I think Sue was the adopted one. Ruth's portrait hung in my grandmother's front room above the fireplace, and it hurt my mother, not because she would take anything away from Ruth. It was because my mother felt that her picture would never, ever be on the wall, because it would remind her mother of her other daughter, the one we visited. I was born into a laburnum tree family with its beauteous bloom and poisonous seeds. I saw Grandma at least once a week, and I loved her. Maybe she did love Catherine Greenwood, the twin who survived. Maybe she loved her so much she couldn't show it, because to show it would have made her feel she loved her daughter in the asylum less, and that was not so. Maybe Catherine was her favourite, the one she fought for, the one who survived. She was the first, but Catherine never felt it. and consequently found love difficult to give and even more difficult to receive. Grandma Munro was always cutting her down to size. The disappointment inside Mum deepened, and I guess it explained her begrudging discontentment with others. The parent and daughter reinforced each other's dysfunction like rutting stags, caught in each other's antlers. In fact, all they wanted of each other was love. This was the great rift. Catherine was the first daughter, and Phyllis was the first mother, and the other daughter was in an asylum. This is how anger is stoked. Bitterness rots the vessel that carries it. None of this is in the files. None of it. Oh, Grandma was a registered foster carer with the local council, like her daughter. Rings. I never saw any other foster children there at Grandma's. The only time I knew of a foster child being at her house was when I was sent there. Duncan Munro, Grandad, was an outpost, an ex-whiskey drinking, motorbike riding maverick from Lochinver in the Highlands. We holidayed there at every opportunity. He owned a picturesque cottage surrounded by hazelnut trees and silver birch that bowed down the hillside to the bay of Lochinver. My memories of those times are idyllic, the smell of wet heather and bracken. Before settling down with Grandma, Grandad would get mad drunk in Lochinver and jump on his motorbike and ride up the treacherous cliff edges like a hurricane. And now and again, I would catch glimpses of that wild Highlander. He was a rugged left-wing spirit in Wigan, and he'd ended up in Bryn, of all places. And there was something about me being other and him being other that gently brought us together amongst the nodding tomato plants of his green house. I liked nothing more than standing there, clearing away weeds while he clipped tomatoes and told me stories. From 7 to 12, Mum would send me there to stay alone. Grandma made me mop the floors, polish the furniture, sweep the yard. I can't remember any of my brothers and sisters being sent away. It's only at the time of writing that I realize it was just me. I didn't mind. I loved the chores. My grandma was so overweight, eventually it would kill her. She ruled over my mother with a rapier tongue and a cynical, withering look, which could reduce Mum to tears. Grandma Munro, the queen of the chessboard, surveyed the world like its aim was to take her out. There wasn't place for grey areas or self-reflection. There was a pathological need to be right about things. There was good and bad and right and wrong, heaven and hell, and all of this clarity would belie the murkiness. I can still hear the emptiness of the school song mocking and echoing down the corridors of the asylum. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Was there something cruel in this family? A strong undercurrent threatening to drag me out into the wide ocean? Was there something about this family that locks its damaged children into places they can't be seen and then punishes itself for the guilt it feels? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. I guess we're going to go. Are we going to have a chat, or are we going to go straight to Q&A? Are we having a chat? Okay. Because I think I've gone over just a little bit. Okay. Cool. Are you okay? Okay. There's a lot in there. Thank you for giving me the time that you gave me. And I need to say, there was poetry in there. The poetry that's in the book is in each chapter, the beginning of each chapter. It holds the whole thing together in a way that hymns may hold a service together in many ways. I just wanted to share that.
Of course.
Say thank you.
No, thank you. I think particularly the takeaway I have is that what's so profound about your story is the power of what's in a name, what's contained in a name.
Wow, do you know that name, Lemn Sissay? I should say that I thought my name was Norman Greenwood, Norman Mark Greenwood. Norman was the name the social worker said he'd give me. Mark was the name the foster parents wanted to give me, which is Mark out of the Bible, from where the line is, the stone that the builder refused will be the head cornerstone. Norman Mark, and then their last name Greenwood. I thought that was my name until I was 16 years of age. And then when I left the children's homes, they gave me my birth certificate, and my birth certificate had the name on it, Lem, said in Ethiopia, Lemen, which is very simply the question why. The question why. My name has always been, from the day I was born, the name that my mother gave me is the question why. I did not know that when I was given it, but that's it. Lemn Sissay I saw when I was 18 years of age. I became a poet and a writer, first double page in The Guardian at 21 years of age, and I still didn't know what my name meant. I was 29 before I knew what my name meant. And it is as simple as one of you being called Y. People don't call their children Y in Ethiopia, okay? So my mother named me Lemen when I was in England on the birth certificate, knowing that only other Ethiopians would know what it meant. And I became a poet without knowing that my name is Y. I mean, could you have a more perfect name? You're a poet!
But I can also add to that,
Yes.
Do you also know the origins of your mother's name?
Oh, I know precisely what my mother's name
Which
is.
is also very
Look,
interesting.
I've been incisive about my story, like to be able to understand that the Irish woman who found me when I I found her when I made a documentary with the BBC in 1995, said to me that she came to my poetry reading in Lancaster, and she said, I knew that the woman who was in the mother and baby home was sat next to me, and it was your mum. The documentary I made with the BBC in 1995 was called Internal Flight, where I go back to Ethiopia and I find my father's family. The point is this: I always knew when I started out as a poet that I would use the resources I get, if I got any, to find what was most important to me, which wasn't a published book. It was to find my family. And if you listen to my Desert Island discs, it'll tell you that. It'll tell you the story. So, sorry, I just deflated myself.
We share in this. I think I find
my
so
mother's
captivating.
name.
Yeah.
My mother's name. It means Yemareshet. Means virgin honey. The freshest virgin honey.
And also translates to loving and dedicator in that kind of sense. Yeah. And it's interesting how...
Is that right, Hanisha? That's right, isn't it? Yemareshet. Yemarshet. It's Amharic. Honey. Just honey. Yeah. Virgin honey is the best honey. But yeah, honey.
And you speak also about how poetry was a medium in which you could find both expression of your own voice, but also identity. And I think I can share with that because as a child growing up, as someone whose dad's side is Jamaican Rastafarian, mum's side is Welsh.
Is that right? Jamaican Rastafarian?
So growing up with figures like Benjamin Zephaniah.
He's a friend of mine, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So it's these figures that I kind of saw almost as kind of long-distance family relatives. So I wonder, when you were looking back and also trying to discover your Ethiopian roots, what kind of draw you to kind of get more of a sense of your
Could you be from a
belonging
better community? I mean, I'm so blessed to be Ethiopian And wherever I travel in the world, there are Ethiopians. So, and they know me. And that's a beautiful thing. Something that you don't see here in England, but I'm known in Ethiopia. Is that fair to say, Hanisha? People know me. I'm known. I've met, and I feel blessed. Maybe it's a particular kind of people that know me in Ethiopia because, But then again, Hanisha, I went to Lalibela. Yeah, I went to Lalibela. And the guys, the little kids, they show you around the churches. The church is made out of stone, the most beautiful things. And the little guy who shows you around, there's a little business going on there, which is fine. He told me about a poet in England that he knew about, So I love that, So Ethiopia has enveloped me in love as the young man who is a poet whose name means why and who found his way home. It's very Lion King, But the truth of it is that it's actually quite complicated. Finding your family is a very complicated thing. Family is real estate. Suddenly you go in and somebody's thinking about, does he want the will? Well, they're not thinking that. But if the will becomes a representative of emotional space and story, and families are all about stories, which is why Christmas dinner is complicated. Families are all about, family is a group of people taking photographs and film of the same scene and then arguing in the editing suite on which film to use in the final version of the film. I've just complicated myself.
I also like a definition you give of family, of a group of people that are proving their existence.
Yes, that's what birthdays is. Birthdays and Christmases, you are you now. Christmases and Easters and holidays. And do you remember when we went to, it's all of that. All of that is so important. It's memory, real estate of the spirit of the group. And you can hate it. Like, I hate it. Oh, grandma's always talking about, mum and dad's always talking about blah, blah, blah. But it's all about positioning the spirit, giving the person a sense of place. It's beautiful. I think I'm not a church goer, but I think that's one of the beautiful things about any faith is that it is a place of point of reference for the heart.
And sharing in that kind of the shared story, as you mentioned, obviously.
The shared story. I from the age of 12, I didn't sit down with a family to have dinner. When I left care, I had a real anxiety about going to somebody's house to sit and have food around a table. I've got it to this day. There's no reason why something that happens in your childhood does not play out in your adulthood. If any of you, all of you know that's the case if you're a parent. So it's everything you share with your child, think the opposite. What if they didn't have that? Then you can start to understand the experience because it's the last thing that you would ever want. And therefore, this is your birthday. This is Christmas. This is what we do. We talk to each other. What's happening? You try to hold the things. I like the aristocratic families who just say, "Oh, do whatever you want to do," because they know that the orbit is the family, wherever you go. I think we should. Anyway, yeah. Sorry.
Another quick one just from me. Just in terms of your kind of process of writing poems, how do you solve writer's block? What's one of your ways of kind of letting the ideas flow?
I have come to realize in my case, so I can't speak for anybody else, but in my case, a writer's block is about my ego, okay? So what you have to do to write, I think, is sort of get over yourself. I'm talking to myself now. To get over myself and into the action. It's all about the action, similar as to any faith that you have or any, it's about the action of meditation, the action of prayer, the action of song, the action of, it's about the action. The problem with writing is you can think a brilliant novel. You can think one. And the act of writing is where the challenge happens. And it's my ego that stops me from committing to the page. It really is, because I'm worried about what people might think, or I'm worried, the truth is, I'm worried about what I might think. I might not be good enough. I might not be that good. It's an egotistical mind that says I might not be good. It's the opposite to what you think. I think the ego is the one that is worried about what anybody else might think about them, which feeds the thought, I might not be good. Do you know what I mean? And I have to get over that, because I have a lot of reasons to not feel good enough. And that, bottom line, it's nobody's fault. It's my ego. It's for me to get over that. It's such a blessing to have got to that space in myself, to know that. When I forgave my foster mum properly, I promise you, a weight lifted off my shoulders that I didn't know was there. Throughout my life, I've blamed anything, any insufficiency in me, I've blamed on my story. So for every relationship that I've had, the relationship would get to a point where I would take my girlfriend to dinner. It happened with every relationship. And I would say to her, I need to introduce you to the dead bear. And her eyes would squint, and I'd say, the dead bear, because we are getting close now. And because we are close, and I'm feeling you, I would like to take this relationship to the next level and introduce you to the dead bear. And then I would leave the restaurant, go outside or open the door and bring the dead bear. And it's just a big bear that's dead with like its jaw thing and little maggots coming out of its eyes and drool coming out of there. And I'd say to her, if you're taking me, and now we're going to take this relationship to the next level, you must take my dead bear as well. I know you've smelt it. I know you've sensed that there's something wrong because of my behavior. It's because I've got the dead bear. Okay? And let's take this relationship to the next level. And I'm like, here! And as I did that, a bit of it would splat on her face, and the jaw would sort of distend, and something would come out of its mouth like a tongue that would fall slowly to the floor while I'm looking at her enthusiastically. Now, the thing is that when I forgave my foster mother, I promise you, no dead bear. There's no dead bear. If there's a bad smell, it's my call. It's on my watch. All right? If I keep making an excuse to leave the room, it's not to attend a dead bear. If I say, I can't handle it here, I've got to be outside because I've got the dead bear to attend to. I mean, don't you understand? Don't you understand? There's a bear that's dead that I need to attend to. Yeah? My bear. And I'm going to show how caring I am by leaving the room to look after the bear. And if you don't understand me, then you are so selfish. So anyway, now there's no bear. So it's my call. It's on me. It's on me. And that is so incredibly liberating. Incredibly liberating. Because beforehand, my angle was always on the story as the central axis, and it's not. It's me, and it's also, I think that there is a higher power out there. But, yeah.
And the power of poetry in terms of just letting go, as you're saying, not holding on to those resentments or bitterness, but actually recognizing that those traumas have happened, that's the experience, but that doesn't define you.
Yes, yes.
And writing your own,
yes.
claiming your own story to now, having the tools to actually have ownership of your own narrative.
Yes.
Which is a testament to your life and a continuing testament to your work.
Yes, it is. I feel, you've just nailed it. And I feel really blessed and lucky to have got there. Anybody can, this isn't, anybody can get there, but we do it in our time, And actually, I understand somebody who doesn't get there, actually, and actually, this is just my way, and my way is not your way. People find different paths. It's really important to acknowledge that. Actually, there's no one size fits all.
We could go on forever.
God, yeah,
but
thank you.
We're going to open up the floor to conversation. So if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask, for the sake of time, if you could limit your question to a succinct sentence, that would be greatly appreciated. And there's a microphone just here in the main aisle. So
it won't be every day. And by the way, you can ask a question that's not to do with anything that I've said. I've said a lot.
Perfect.
A question that you've been wanting to ask. Perfect. I know it's strange when people flip over from speaking for an hour and whatever to asking you, do you want to ask a question? Oh, do you have to come out to the... What the hey, why should you have to come out? Oh my God, I would come to you. I say oh my God in the true sense.
Come on then.
Yes.
I just want to thank you so much for your generosity, for everything. And I found it very painful to listen to as well. No, it was brilliant. And if I don't hear anybody else, this is the one. But the one thing I wanted to ask you is about forgiveness. You forgave your foster mother. Did she accept your forgiveness?
That's a really good question. You forgave your foster mother. Did she accept your forgiveness? I'd say as much as she could. She did a couple of things. One of the things she said, oh, you were a naughty boy. And the other was that she said, I've been through, my grandma was bad to me. My mum was bad to me, is what she said. And I said, when she said that, I said, don't you think I've had time to think about that? What I knew is that they had to go back to, they must have, because nobody called me, they must have gone back to the family, my aunties and my uncles and my cousins and my grandparents, and they must have said to them, don't be in touch with him. Because there's no way that I could lose this tree of family, this canopy, these branches, these seasons. So they must have gone back to tell everybody. And that's when I realized that, family is all about stories. And stories holding the line. And we've all got them. Stories which we're told to believe. It doesn't matter whether they're true or not. They can feel true. That's what matters. And actually holding them together as a family is a kind of truth. Family is such a fascinating, beautiful thing. But above all things, and I think this is for faiths as well, I think it's the same. Above all things, the thing that I'm not talking about that is central to it, to all of it, and that is love. There's something without words. There's something without words which when I see it in families, it's beautiful. Often girlfriends' families, I'm fascinated by how they work. It's not through speaking. It's through something else, a wisdom of silence. It's easy to think of, dysfunctions in families, fine, but there is a knowing, and I think it happens in later life as well, so grandparents can see it. They can see where their children are going wrong with their children, but they can let it go as well. I think there's something beautiful about not speaking, about not unraveling everything inside the family, about not doing that. Something beautiful about that. I'm unwilling to... Bitterness rots the vessel that carries it. There is love in families, and it's an incredible thing. And it happens at dinners, and it happens... I watch little kids looking back at their parents when they crawl away, and it happens in lots of It happens in anger, when people are angry with their parents. They're screaming, love me. I want to know how to interpret love. It's beautiful. Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. You criticised the care system for its lack of care and empathy. I don't know if conditions are the same now as they were in the 60s, but if so, how could they be improved, or how would you improve them?
Thank you. I just realised, if you're all hearing me, how I didn't hear you.
Okay.
You're not doing anything wrong, it's just the echo and the age. Ask again, please.
Okay. You criticised the care system for its lack of care and empathy. I don't know if conditions are the same now as they were in the 60s.
Yeah, good.
But if so, how could they be improved, or how would you improve them?
Right. Great question. A great question. There are things happening now which are better than they were in the 60s. But if you're in care, that means nothing. Because there is no way that a person in care is going, well, it's better than it was in the 60s. So it's a question that I often get asked, but I'm also like thinking, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work for anybody. That doesn't serve anybody. But it's a good question and a natural question to ask. I would say things are worse now than when I was in care, when I was taken into care. I think when I was taken into care, there was a level of innocence, but there was also a level of coercive nature between the institutions and wider society. So it kind of worked. The system worked. It was terrible if you were in care, but it kind of works for society. So I don't think the comparison works. What was the second part of the question?
How would you improve the system?
That's great. How would I improve the care system? I would start to do what Camilla Batmangela did, which has now been taken on, the surface of it has been taken on by care systems around the country. Love is a set of actions and thoughts, right? Love triggers a set of actions and thoughts. So I would like us to do the actions and thoughts of love for children in care. Very, very simple as that. So if a child goes into care and they've been traumatized, it makes sense that they will act out that trauma. It is love that will understand that and not punish them. You see? So love is the key, but I don't mean love as in a... When I was in care, I would ask the staff, when I was in care, I would say to the staff, why do you do this job? And they say, I do this job because I love children. None of them said it in first person. None of them said, I do this job because I love you. You see? So the detail of love, which is what any parent knows about those actions, the detail, is what I want for the child in care. And I believe we can get it as well. And I believe that it's happening in various ways. And I believe that social workers are the heroes of society. The heroes. They work in a care system where they want to care, even if they're not allowed to. They're trying their best. You know, I think they're our heroes. And they're the first people to say, no, we're not. Okay, thanks. That's the answer to that question. Gosh, I don't like this having to come out. Yes?
That's fine. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just want to say thank you for doing this. I really am fascinated by your story. My question is that did you have someone when you were younger that you looked up to as a kind of for guidance of any kind, like an adult figure that's outside of your family members? You said that you saw your social worker a lot, but I don't know what your relationship was, so just curious about that.
The hero of this book is a social worker whose name is Norman. It's pure coincidence that he's got the same name as the first social worker who named me after him. And he's the hero in the book. He couldn't do the job that he wanted to do and did as best as he could, which was terrible. But I can see in the files that he is speaking for me. He's going, this kid is a good kid. And he explains why. He's also fully aware that the system has worked against me for no other reason that he can see other than a prejudice against me because of race or because of children in care. I believe there's a prejudice against children in care. So he is a shining light, although I didn't know it at the time. It's definitely in the files, and we've become friends, and he comes to my events, and I get him to stand up, and people applaud him, rightly so. But like I said, didn't know at the time. His job was to imprison me, and he did. And yes, he wrote in the files, I don't think this is right. But he couldn't do anything about it. So he's an anti-hero. He was not heroic. He could not do anything for it. But I can see where he tried. It's good to get to a place where your own anger doesn't get in the way of you seeing people. And I feel really blessed to be able to look back and to see him and to go over to him and hold my hand out to him and get him to stand up, because he is happy for that connection to have been made. Many a social worker will know it's a wonderful thing when a child comes back as an adult and says, I saw what you did. It's a good question.
We have time for one more.
One more, yeah.
Yeah.
I will repeat his question. I will repeat his question through here.
I'm just interested to know how your sense of identity evolved from you being Norman to you being fully engaged in being an Ethiopian.
It's a great question.
You weren't Ethiopian when you were Norman.
It's a great question. How did my sense of identity develop going from being Norman, a Lancashire lad? I didn't meet a black person until I was 9 years of age. I didn't know a person of colour until I was 16, 17 years of age. So how did my identity go from Norman to Lemn Sissay at 18 years of age? Here's the deal. I was always Lemn Sissay. The name Norman was an anomaly. So that's the first thing to say. And secondly, I am a Wiganer. I'm from Lancashire. I'm a metropolitan. I live in London. I'm Ethiopian. I'm English. I am fully English. The government literally was my parent for the first 18 years of my life. I have met the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, shook his hand, been invited to his residence, etc. I have met the Prime Ministers of England. Yeah, I have actually. God, I've done that. Yeah, met Prime Ministers of England. I've met the royalty here. I've met the Emperor Haile Selassie's children. I have friends who are Ethiopian. I am Ethiopian. I am British. I am a Lancashire lad. I live in London. I'm a collection of molecules. I'm a spirit. I'm a mistake. I'm all of those things. I'm all of those things, and I'm still discovering more of those things. The problem with the identity question, not the question from you, the identity question, is it's trying to pin us down. And we are mercurial, fluid, powerful beings looking for what to believe in, where to believe in, looking out at the same time as looking inwardly. The question of identity is trying to lock us in. Are you one of us or are you one of them? Are you on this side or are you on that side? I go to Ethiopia and there are Ethiopians who say, he's not Ethiopian. I go to England and there are some English people who say, he's not English. I grew up with the mines in the mines of Lancashire and the mills of Lancashire. That's how I grew up. But there are people in the same town that I grew up who will say, you're not from round here. You're not one of us. I was the only black in the village. I blooming well am. But the thing is, you can be all of those things and more. And that's the blessing of identity, is that we're constantly growing and learning about ourselves. And I never want to stop. Come on! Let the light pour in. That's the title. Let the light pour in. Jay, do you have one of these? I'm going to give this one. This is a young poet from Yorkshire who's quite incredible. Jay is quite an incredible poet. Can I just say one thing? It's Black History Month. It's Black History Month, folks, and it's just such an honour to be here in Black History Month as well. October the 5th is National Poetry Day. Get a book of poetry, not mine necessarily. Actually, no, you can get mine here.
You can.
I've got my book here.
So they'll be available. Lemn will be after the talk. They'll be in the crypt. He'll be signing various copies of his book. My name
Come and
is
say
Mine.
hello to me.
Let the light pour in. And I think for all of us, particularly on what seemed like a very wet evening, the light truly has poured in this place. I think it's warmed all of our hearts, our bodies, and our minds. So can we just say again a very big round of applause for Lemn Sissay.
Thank you. Thank you. Bless him. Thanks. Thanks, folks. I'm loving the journey I'm on, and I'm loving that you're with me as well, and that you're reading it ahead of me as well. Will you take a photograph now, please? I say this because we're going to do two things. I want you to tweet the photo. By the way, Jay, this is how to actually lose the end of a gig. This is how not to do it, okay? You know, the good thing I should be doing is walking off, you know, just in the glory, but no. Take a photograph, if you don't mind, and tweet it with the...
It's a Martin in the Fields hashtag.
Send a Martin in the Fields hashtag and at Lemn Sissay, would you please? Would you please? Look, this is now a witness. This is now a witness that I was here and I did do this gig. And you were here too. Lots of love. And I'll see you down there with the books if you'd like to say hello.
Can I just remind everyone that there is reception downstairs. Do come and join us downstairs. And there are books by Lemn Sissay downstairs, which he's promised to sign for us. Do come back in 2 weeks for our next autumn lecture with Ken Loach, who's talking about film. A wonderful lecture about film. And do see Ken Loach's film, which is called The Old Oak, a brilliant film about Syrian families living in this country. Thank you for coming tonight. Do come and join us downstairs. It's been a great night. Thank you all.